wars and rumors of wars.
Welcome to Chinese news.
It comes from China. 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 It's not racist at all, no.
Nope. This is the Wall Street Journal, and they have a headline here: U.S. to expand troop presence in Taiwan for training against China threat.
Training.
Yes, yeah. Things always happen when they're training. The U.S. is markedly increasing the number of troops deployed to Taiwan, more than quadrupling the current number to bolster a training program for the island's military amid a rising threat from China. It's a rising threat, Basil. Oh,
yeah,
man.
It is.
I guess, but it hasn't. Okay, anyway. This thing
shooting
is
missiles over it and
I know, but it's been going on for
their lasers.
I know, but it's just been going on for a while. The U.S. plans to deploy between 100 and 200 troops to the island in the coming months, up from roughly 30 there a year ago, according to U.S. officials. The larger force will expand a training program the Pentagon has taken pains not to publicize, as the U.S. works to provide Taipei with the capabilities it needs to defend itself without provoking Beijing. Taking a lot of pains to not publicize it until now, Wall Street Journal. The number of American troops, which has included Special Operations Forces and U.S. Marines, has fluctuated by a handful during the past few years. According to Defense Department data, your black cat is now on you.
Yes,
the planned increase would be the largest deployment of forces in decades by the U.S. on Taiwan, as the two draw closer to counter China's growing military presence. Then it goes into how they have Michigan National Guards training Taiwanese military people. They're coming in from Taiwan to be trained. And it talks about the balloons, of course, the balloons.
They got balloons?
They mention it because it's part of the growing threat, of course.
Oh, they mentioned the actual Chinese balloon.
Yeah. The additional troops will be tasked with training Taiwan forces not only on U.S. weapons systems, but on military maneuvers to protect against a potential Chinese offensive. And U.S. officials, the officials declined to provide other details about deployment. Taiwan's Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-chen confirmed Friday the deployment of Taiwanese troops to the U.S., describing the training as going beyond basic combat skills. All right, so this is just more than that. Chu, speaking to reporters after the publication of this article, said the advanced training would be conducted at the battalion level, focusing on tactics such as staff operations and troop deployment. In Taiwan, a battalion can include up to 600 soldiers, but Mr. Chu didn't give details about the exact number of troops that Taiwan is sending to the U.S. Okay, so U.S. is training some Taiwanese military. We are sending an additional up to from 100 to 200, maybe 300 extra troops to Taiwan. A little mysterious on what kind of training they're getting, but I want to put a little side by side and compare this article with another article that I think paints an interesting picture.
Chinese news!
DailyMail.co.uk from the 21st of February had this headline: China is planning to turn hundreds of retired Cold War fighter jets into suicide drones that could be used for massive attack on Taiwan. Okay, so again, we won't go into the details, but they have these old Cold War airplanes. They're kind of they're J6s or whatever. They got some J7s now, and they talk about how there's a whole development of this aircraft in China. Now, again, let's just talk about the picture it's painting. The U.S. is sending troops to Taiwan, up to 300 maybe. That'll be there training and getting prepared. Meanwhile, China is going to send unmanned suicide drones, formerly Cold War fighter jets, presumably to crash into wherever their adversaries may be in Taiwan. I don't know that there's a good end to this. It sounds like it's going to be bloody, unless the tactical information that we are not receiving from the U.S. side is, we got our own drones. That's what we're training. We're training the Taiwanese to have to unleash our own drones to defend the island nation against their suicide drones.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they have some. We just sent them some air defense systems like last month or something like that. That's probably what they're getting trained on. I mean, it is not to be sort of scoffed at, the positioning going on right now for transferring at least U.S. military attention, specifically to Taiwan, to defend against China. And the variety of different activities on both sides. I mean, for us to be sending over quite a large number of troops for training purposes is kind of a step up from what we've seen. However, we have been slowly ramping up military support for Taiwan. However, that has been strained recently, as we heard that a lot of the missiles, a lot of the surface-to-air missiles, a lot of the weapon systems that the U.S. had promised to Taiwan had gotten packed up and sent to Ukraine instead. Whoopsie daisies. I think it's put us like 5 years behind or something on something we had promised Taiwan. There's an obvious sort of shift going on. And I think we can see it in some of the reporting, or some of the language at least, with some of the news coverage regarding possible winding down in Ukraine. One of the interesting ones was AP, of course. The headline was "China issues peace plan. Zelensky says he'll await details."
Fight for Ukraine. New world order.
Yeah, China called for a ceasefire and peace talks between Ukraine and Russia on Friday. That was today. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky cautiously welcomed Beijing's involvement, but said success would depend on actions, not words. So today, this morning, kind of one of the biggest moves from China, because we had been seeing... Well, the article kind of mentions it. Let's do this. Okay. Beijing claims to have a neutral stance in the war that began 1 year ago, but has also said it has a, quote, no limits friendship with Russia, and has refused to criticize Moscow's invasion of Ukraine or even refer to it as an invasion. It has accused the West of provoking the conflict and, quote, fanning the flames by providing Ukraine with defensive arms. Quote, I believe that the fact that actually... You know what? That last part, by providing Ukraine with defensive arms, is a little bit of needs to be fact checked by AP, because that's not. I read the at least a big bulk of the text of China's release or whatever for the ceasefire. Yeah, and it wasn't. They didn't quite say that the West fanned the flames by giving weapons. Defensive arms to Ukraine, but this is the AP. They're putting out the propaganda.
Oh, I got something to say to AP a little later in the show. AP.
Okay. Quote, I believe that the fact that China started talking about Ukraine is not bad, Zelensky told a news conference Friday, quote, but the question is what follows the words. The question is in the steps and where they will lead to. The plan released by China's foreign ministry mainly reiterated long-held positions, and analysts said Beijing would be an unlikely broker. But some observers warned that Ukraine and its allies need to tread carefully, saying that the rejection of what China sees as its peace overture could move Beijing closer toward providing arms to Russia instead. And that's kind of the key aspect of this. We know, China has over and over again talked about their limitless friendship with Russia. However, they've kind of timidly said that they don't like that the war's going on and war is bad. But, we need to all be reasonable here. And it was only recently in the past couple of weeks that there were rumblings of China getting ready to, materially support Russia by sending arms and other things like that. Originally, they did send what was it? They sent like some humanitarian stuff to Russia, which they claimed were just like blankets and I don't know, food or something. But there was talks about them sending arms. Now, which is an interesting turning point for China, because they are simultaneously claiming to be neutral, yet supportive of their friend Russia, but considering sending them aid, which would really make them not so neutral anymore. So it's really interesting to watch the geopolitical leadership be like, okay, well, we don't want to push the Chinese away, because that would not be good for all sorts of reasons. However, as we've seen with, the blatant moves by NATO, going back all the way to 2014, the U.S.'s role in inflaming conflict in Ukraine, and the talking about expansion of NATO, and the actual expansion of NATO over the years, where this was, the provoked and unprovoked question is one that's sort of ignored in the mainstream all along, but it's obvious that there was some provocation involved. In the same way, we don't want to provoke China to join Russia's side, but we do have a track record of doing that exact thing. And while positioning around Taiwan, it kind of gives this impression that we have a chance to wind down the Russian conflict. It's the Ukraine conflict, specifically in order to wind up the Taiwan. Yeah. But we're really playing a balancing game right now of, it's not if there will be a conflict over Taiwan, it's when, and will we have a war with two fronts? Will we be fighting Ukraine and Taiwan at the same time?
Yeah. And plus, if China and Russia unite in terms of this war, effectively the war in Ukraine and the war in Taiwan especially becomes even more, I guess, because fighting for the territory of Taiwan becomes a Russia-China thing if they're allies.
Well, it's two different wars. That's the weird thing. It's not like Russia.
I know it's two different wars. I know, but I'm saying
no. Hold on. Okay. That's okay. I just want to put this out there for definition of terms, because we wouldn't be talking about one war. We would be talking about two separate wars where Russia doesn't really care about Taiwan and China doesn't really care about Ukraine, but somehow they find themselves united because they're both fighting us, Right. So we are kind of the common denominator in both of their sort of geographical aggressions.
Yeah. No, and it goes into sort of, we've covered sort of the right-left paradigm with the China-Russia thing and the two-front war, and how it's literally sort of helping create the two, or at least creating narratives for the two political parties here in the U.S. But if they unite, then that's very interesting, because, or not unite necessarily, but just to have a shared front when it comes to the war in World War III, then we are, man, they are already way ahead when it comes to infrastructure, especially with China, Belt and Road. You talk about that. You talk about Gazprom and the pipelines and all that. That it's pretty. I don't know, man. It does feel like you're just going to step back and be a citizen of the world. It's kind of like U.S. is very much kind of poking the bear, so to speak. But anyway, I guess it's not a surprise.
That's how we do. It's a very profitable thing to do.
Yeah.